So welcome to tonight's County Council meeting, starting a few minutes late. Just had some last-minute changes, trying to move some things around. We are starting tonight, and I am always nervous when things like this happens. We have our invocation tonight from Pastor Will Verdun of Celebration Christian Church. And hey, Will, how are you? So this is our first, it's our first virtual pastor prayer. So congratulations, you've broken the mold for us. We're very excited. So Will is going to do that, and then I will lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all please stand. And Will, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, now that you can all see me, I ask you to either close your eyes or take whatever posture is comfortable for you as we invite the Spirit into this moment. Spirit of understanding and graciousness, we ask that your wisdom would be upon our lips, that our ears would be open, that our mouths and tongues would be bridled and yet articulate. We ask that you would bring down our walls and open up our arms in compassion and generosity. Let us speak and act and invoke in prudence, consideration, with all of your humanity and creation in mind. We welcome you into this moment, Spirit. Push aside the things that plague our minds and weigh down our hearts. We might invite you, graciousness, love, forgiveness, humility, and boldness. We welcome you into this moment, now and always. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Will, thank you very much. As they said on the A-team, I love it when a plan comes together. So that actually worked. With that, let's start with roll call.
Councilman Cronin.
Here.
Councilman Brazel. Councilman Hammond.
Here.
Councilman Elam.
Here.
Councilman Hollander.
Here.
Councilwoman Schneider.
Here.
Councilman White.
Here.
So, Judge, we're not amending at this moment. We're going to amend a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm waiting for a couple of folks to show in, so I'll interrupt you.
Beautiful. So just fair warning, we are going to amend the agenda a little bit later on, but we'll get to that when it happens. With that, we will move on to public presentations, and I would invite the county executive, as soon as she gets done setting the microphone.
Sorry.
It's okay. Take your time. You look good. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the council, I'd like to make a short presentation on two different items tonight. One involves the quarantine policy, and as you know, we've been talking about this for at least 4 meetings now. And what we're looking at here is basically this shows the number of quarantines in each of our school districts for the last year. All right, and we're going back. And the thing that I want you to pay attention to here is the numbers that we have here recently in September, in many ways are just as high as the ones we had last November in the schools, okay? They're certainly not as high out on the street and in the community at large. But when everybody went back to school, you can see that those numbers went up very high. And the things that you need to understand is there's two things that basically control the number of quarantines. Number one is the number of infections, and that's really the most important. The other thing is the job that the schools do in identifying those that are probable causes that are within the standards that the state established back this summer, which is 6 feet instead of 3 feet last year and so forth. But depending upon how they interpret that, you can see some districts apparently interpret it a little bit differently, or maybe they have different situations with their classrooms, aren't as crowded or more crowded or whatever. But you can see everybody's kind of in the same ballpark, but there are more, some places, looks like Orchard Farm and Wentzville have a higher contact to case ratio than some of the others. Now, if you look at last November, and I'm sure you all remember this, that red line there, that was the date on which the state sent us a modified quarantine. And we had the option of accepting that or rejecting it. I think all the St. Louis County and St. Louis City rejected it. We adopted it. And you can see that after we adopted that, that allowed students who were quarantined to come back to school as long as the school had a mask mandate. And that was not our idea. That was the state's idea. That was the state's plan, which we would then adopted. And you can see that the numbers started to go down. They obviously went down the most at Christmas time when the kids weren't in school, so you can see that. Went back up in January, but then after the first of the year, continued to go down to the point where they were rather low in May when school ended. Of course, during the summer then, that's when the state came out with yet different standards, and standards that were not as tough. But even with the lesser standards, you can see when we started to talk about this back at the end of August, things went up very quickly. Now, this is just taking that last section since September when we've really been talking about this a lot. And you can see that we start there when school opens. On 9/1, after we had that meeting a couple days earlier, and there was some disagreement about what we could and couldn't do, 9/1 was the first contact we had with the state, asking them for clarification. The problem is, it wasn't until 9/23, 23 days later, when we finally got an answer that said that we could make changes as long as the conditions justified it. So if the conditions justified it, we could make changes. And 3 days later, we came up with a modified quarantine, and this was the one that we told you about. We had visited with the superintendents, and everybody agreed that was a good change to make at that particular time. And as you can see, after we made that change, the numbers in just about every district continued to go down. On 10/04/23 is when Wentzville established their own standard, which less than what the county had, our guidance had suggested. And you can see that for, the next 3 or 4 weeks, that the Wentzville numbers pretty much stayed flat. But here's the good news. Since 10/27, the numbers even in Wentzville have gone down. Everything else has continued to go down. And as we promised, back when we got the go-ahead from the state, we have continued to talk to the superintendents. I visited with all of them a week ago today. And after that, the next day is when the CDC went ahead and announced that 5 to 11-year-olds would be vaccinated if they chose to be. And in addition to that, again, looking at the conditions, we're number 1 in the state in completed vaccinations. So I think that's, again, a further justification for us loosening the standards. And the same day that the state issued its guidance, or its order to us, that they were expanding the vaccine and we could start giving them to the younger kids, that's the day that we went ahead and announced our new policy. Under the new policy, if you are quarantined, before the latest change, you could come back if you'd been wearing a mask. Now, anybody can come back if they put a mask on. So again, this is the approach that some of you wanted us to take 3 or 4 weeks ago. And again, this is why we did it. And if you look at the last 2 weeks, this is why we are. And my hope is that those lines continue to converge somewhere near zero, and we won't have to spend a lot of time on this in future meetings. Now, that's one thing. The other thing, and if somebody can get me a copy of what I have here.
Here it is.
We start seeing reports in the paper, 6, 8 weeks ago maybe, about the Spire pipeline. And Then we heard that Spire was actually contacting some of our emergency management people. And we right away got in touch with Spire and said, hey, we need a briefing on this. And Joanne, was about a month ago, they came out, gave us a briefing on the pipeline. And if you haven't been reading the articles, what happened is the Spire pipeline went through Councilman Schneider's district down through Portage and West Alton to provide additional gas to Spire. And that was finished, 2 years ago. And we've been benefiting from that pipeline ever since. Apparently, after it was built, and I'm not quite sure how they can do this, but after it was built, an environmental group filed a lawsuit challenging FERC, which is the Federal Emergency Regulatory Agent Commission. It challenged the fact that FERC had agreed to let them do that pipeline. And they took it all the way to, I think, the D.C. Court of Appeals, and the court agreed with them. And the court basically decided that they didn't have the right to do that pipeline. It put in place an emergency stay that allowed the pipeline to continue to operate until December 13th. Okay? And that's basically what we talked to Spire about when they came in a month or so ago. And if you understand the situation, obviously, we didn't want to create a panic. At the same time, we wanted to be prepared. And for the last month, our people have been looking at contingency plans if the worst happens. Now, what is the worst? The worst would be if we don't get the court to extend that stay beyond December 13th. And if we were to have a particularly cold winter like we did last February, there would be a chance that we would run out of gas. And the reason I say this and want to make sure you understand it is when they came out to talk to us, the first people to be impacted would be North St. Louis County and St. Charles County. So once again, we're very hopeful that the court will do the right thing and extend that moratorium at least through the winter. I mean, I can't believe even the environmentalists would want people to freeze to death. So we've been looking at that, and in an effort to make sure that does happen, this letter I'm going to be mailing in the morning is to FERC, just to put us on record and let them know how important it will be to keep this pipeline open for the people of St. Charles County. We've been getting just dribs and drabble of information about this, and I think it's so important that we know everything that's going on and kind of where we are, that I've asked Rory to go ahead and file a motion so that the county can intervene on the side of Spire. If we're granted that motion and we're in the case, we can make the sort of arguments that making in this letter, but equally important, I think we'll be able to see the discovery, we'll be able to know where things are moving, and hopefully, again, if it's possible, we'll be able to at least be somebody in the courtroom who's not interested in, well, who's interested in actually making sure that our people are comfortable this winter. And again, I don't want anybody to panic because there's plenty of time and lots of things we can do. I do want everybody to know that we're preparing if an emergency does happen. And that's where we are. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to.
Mr. Cronin.
Mr. Cronin?
As a council, would it be helpful if we passed a resolution in support?
Sure, I think that'd be helpful
And at
too.
the same token, the cities that we represent, I'll ask them to do the same thing. I mean, I have family in Texas. I know what happens when you run out of energy in the middle of the winter. At least they could delay this thing until springtime. This could be horrible. I mean, it could shut down a lot of our major industries. People could freeze to death. It could be pretty damn bad. So I'd like to, if we agreement with some of the other council members, I'd like you to draft a resolution for the next meeting in support of extending that deadline or whatever you think the best wording is.
You'll all get a copy of this letter, and I'll go ahead and send it to your office, and Rory can work on the resolution. And I've never spent a whole winter in Texas. My brother lives down there, and he says it's not nearly as cold as it is here.
Well, when you
And,
get
I
electric, it's
was
pretty
listening to
cold.
radio, I mean, I was listening to radio this afternoon, and they had somebody on from the industries, and apparently they had this happen on a lesser scale down in southern Missouri last year. But there were several factories, a lot of employers had to shut down for a week.
Same thing in the Dallas area.
In the Dallas area, too. So, you know, I guess if our homes get a little cool, we can get some more blankets or go stay with some friends. But if we can't
You could all
go
go to the arena.
to the arena, well, that's the first thing. It's funny you ask that, because that's the first thing I asked. I said, "Are we at the arena? Are we on gas or electric?" And we're on both. Half and half. So it'll at least be maybe warmer in your house, but it may not be perfect. But yes, we're looking at all those possibilities. But again, I'm hopeful that a court, Judge, you may know better than I do, but I can't believe that a court would punish the people of St. Charles County for an alleged violation of some federal law by our provider.
I would hope that we would file that motion to intervene as soon as possible.
Okay, good.
Mr. Brazel.
I got
Yes,
some
sir.
questions. I understand
Joe,
what
could you
you
pull that mic?
on the quarantines. I just got a couple questions. On your graph, I don't know if you want to go back to it, but you had your decision-making based on quarantines, right? That's what you said?
Yeah.
It said quarantine. So,
Yeah.
and some of the schools are more aggressive on the quarantines than.
That's correct.
So by quarantine kids, how does that prove that COVID is not as bad or bad? I mean, how does that prove anything that we're basing it off of quarantine students?
Well, because the guidance we received from the state established a policy of probables and close contacts and all those sorts of things. And the point, and the most important thing here is, when it comes to the public generally, we're doing the contact tracing, and we're deciding, we call people and we decide based on what they tell us who's probable. Then we call them and tell them they should quarantine. Now, you and I both know that some do, some don't. We, just like mask mandate, we don't have a mask mandate because we can't enforce it, but we can't enforce quarantines either. The difference here, and I understand if people,
Folks,
I understand if people have a different opinion than I do, but the fact of the matter is, we are dependent on each school district to send us the names of the kids who meet the state's definition of a close contact. We don't go out and examine that ourselves. We don't question them. If they send us a lot, that's who we call. If they send us a few, that's who we call. But the fact of the matter is, the number is based upon the number of people that are infected. And the more that are infected, the more that are quarantined. And you can see that there's some districts here, there's very few people infected and very few quarantines.
But where's
And
this saying?
now we're in a situation, hopefully we're in a situation now, again, you can see that everybody's in much better shape. Wentzville is still kind of an outlier, but again, if you look at the last 2 weeks, Wentzville's moving in the right direction now. And because they are, and because we have to come up with one policy, we've added that additional option. Nobody is forced to use it if they don't like it. We made the change earlier, and there was a couple districts just kept doing it the way they did before, because they liked the way things were going. They thought it was working. So this simply gives the districts an additional option. Wentzville's already taken advantage of it before we suggested it. But now if the other districts want to do that, they would certainly not get any arguments from us.
But what I'm trying to understand is you're basing your information based on quarantines, but not infection. We know what the infection rate is?
We know,
1.2.
we know that for Wentzville, for instance, for every infection, they've sent us 4.9 people they say were close contacts, and that's who we quarantine. Fort Zumwalt is only 4.16. So the point is, they don't, they look at who is infected and then who is close to them, and that's who they send us.
No, I
Now,
understand.
you can say, I mean, there may be more people that are infected or fewer people are infected, but we, again, get those numbers from the state. So we are getting the data from other people. We are giving them the formula on how to do the probable cases. We're giving everybody the same formula. As you can see, the results are slightly different. For some reason, the private schools are very low. And I don't know why that is, but we're not going to go out and investigate and try to find out. So the fact of the matter is, we have to deal with the people they send us, and they have to deal with the people the state tells them are infected. And they may be making mistakes, Mr. Brazel, I don't know, but that's where our data comes from. And we have to make our decisions based on that. And I just wanted people to see why we made the decision we did last week, and perhaps understand why we didn't do it a month ago when you asked us to.
At what point, I mean, for me, I got to tell you, I have a really hard time. I've been at odds with you guys on this and I'm not trying to be obnoxious.
I will give you credit. You were upset about this from the very beginning. You came in, we talked about it last year, even in November before, and then I think you were slightly more happy when the governor gave us that option and we went to it. But yeah, you've been concerned about this, and you're entitled to your opinion, and
I guess what I
respect
want to
it.
know, though, Steve, is at what point is this nonsense going to end?
I hope soon.
Because I don't think
Joe,
we have
do
any...
you think there's anybody in this room wants to see this end? that
Well,
more
here's
than
the
I do?
thing, though. If we're a Republican county like we're supposed to be, these are not Republican perspectives at all. These are left lunatic nonsense stuff. And
You know the
so-
last two changes we made?
But to see if it's
No.
I just want to make, the thing is our health department is completely overzealous, and they're the ones dictating this nonsense to our school districts. And the school districts are having a hard time making the right choice because it's coming from our health department. And so I have a real problem with this because look out here, look out in this crowd. How come the adults aren't wearing masks or having to do this contact tracing and all this nonsense, and we're picking on the kids? And it's wrong. It's totally wrong. And so I'm just saying, and we set up here, my perspective is any kind of change that's made through the health department or doing these kind of mandates or doing this kind of stuff should come to a vote of us. And that was what House Bill, and we're going to be a disagreement on that. I understand, but that's House Bill 271. And so I just don't understand why we're continue with this. So I don't know, Steve, we're not going to agree on it. I mean, we're just not, and I'm not going to sit here and argue with you because we can go
Yeah,
back and forth.
the only thing I'll take exception to is there are other Republican counties, Franklin County, they haven't, the last two changes we've made, they're still sticking with their original, and that's fine. Maybe they don't have the same level of vaccination, maybe they have other things that are different. I'm just saying that we were told we could make changes if the conditions supported it. I think the conditions do support it now, and I know you thought the conditions supported it earlier, and we'll just have to disagree on that.
But this whole thing with even if you said vaccinations, vaccinations are killing people and they don't even talk about it. And so the other thing that we have to be concerned with, you're talking about these 5 to 11-year-olds, that's insane. That's insane if anybody thinks they should have a 5 or 11-year-old vaccinated. So, I mean, and I don't want to get into that with you guys because you guys think I'm a tin hat wearing fool, but I'm just saying, there's a lot of problems with that vaccination. And the mainstream media is not talking about it. That's a fact. And to be proud that we have 71% of the residents in our county persuaded to be vaccinated is kind of scary to me. But that's all. I'm sorry. I'm just.
Go ahead.
Chairman, Joe, I don't know, you keep saying you guys. I'm opposed to these quarantines. I'm opposed to mask mandates. So I'm with you,
Yeah, but see, none of you guys stood with me 8 weeks ago when we should have done this 8 weeks ago. And that was a compromise. With what you're doing now was what we want to do 8 weeks ago. And I could barely
No,
stomach.
Joe, it wasn't 8 weeks ago, it's 4 weeks ago.
Or it says 9/1, but I don't know. I was going off of your
No,
date.
no, I think it's 4 weeks ago, it was 2 meetings ago.
Well, so, I mean, anyway, that's fine.
Okay,
But the whole thing is we're trending in the right direction.
we're trending in the right direction, and we will,
Yeah.
That's rude.
We're trending in the right direction, and hopefully we will continue to trend in that.
Folks, please. So just to be clear, the new policy is,
New policy is basically the policy that I think that the latest resolution that we did not adopt asked for, and that's what they've been doing in, Franklin County?
Jefferson County.
Or Jefferson County, New Madrid, Joplin, maybe? I don't know.
Joplin, yep.
I think your resolution listed several places.
so the point is, these kids won't be, if you're a contact, you won't be quarantined anymore. You can wear a mask for 2 weeks. and
Everybody can
then
go back to school.
You're back in school, and nobody has to quarantine anymore.
And the next-
Unless you're
and the
sick.
next-
That's the new policy,
The
correct?
next step will be no mask required.
Gotcha. All right.
Okay?
You have something else, Mr. Cronin?
I represent the majority of the Winsfield School District, and a month ago, I was getting numerous emails about the quarantine policies in Winsfield. But I have not got anything in the last couple of weeks. So the numbers are trending down. Let's just all hope this is behind us. The new Pfizer and Merck pills are coming out, that the Pfizer pill's 89% effective at combating COVID. And I realize everybody's got difference of opinion, but I got a daughter-in-law that's a pharmacist, and I got a 5-year-old grandson. I know that 5-year-old grandson's going to get a quarantine shot. So that being said, everybody's got the right to their own opinion, but let's just hope this all gets behind us by next year.
We will do the same thing we did with everybody else on vaccination. We'll have them available for people who want them. In fact, I think we've already committed for the vaccine that we have. So we're hoping to get some more in the next couple of days. But that, again, we haven't had that discussion, and we're not going to have a discussion about any kind of mandates regarding vaccine. That, I think everybody in here agrees that that's a personal decision. Okay?
Right. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you. So with that, we have a conditional, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, if you don't mind, may I interrupt you?
by all means.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend tonight's agenda to bring Bill number 5013 forward for presentation at this time.
I will second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask the clerk to read the bill.
Bill number 5013, requested by Nancy Schneider and John White, sponsored by council as a whole. An ordinance to rename the St. Charles County Juvenile Justice Center the Raymond J. Grush Juvenile Justice Center.
Thank you. And in support of that, we have a number of people who are here tonight. I've been in contact with some of them over the last several months, and we learned that the way to proceed with this was to introduce an ordinance, which has its first reading here tonight. We have some information that's been passed out to the council members with respect to this. And at this time, I'd like to invite Jim Wallace to come up to the podium and to give us a little presentation about the importance and the reason for this bill. And then I think there are a couple of other folks here in support of it who'd like to make some brief comments as well. Hi, Jim. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, and thank you, Council, for listening to me tonight in support of Bill 5013. I'm going to keep it short. There's a couple other individuals in this room who are probably a little more well-known than myself and more esteemed. I have given a packet of information to each of the council members that lays out some pictures of Ray, his juvenile court family, his family of 10, support letters. I think you'll recognize some of the support letters, signatures from former CEOs, superintendents, judges, as well as a honorary Andrew Higgins award that he received in 2008 that Ray received. That gives a great biography of Ray if you don't know Ray. For me, I'm just going to do a quick timeline and say this is why I'm here. In 1972, almost 50 years ago, Ray, 1 week shy of his 23rd birthday, somebody gave him a shot to be the juvenile officer in St. Charles County. And at that point in time, he was the one person in St. Charles County representing the juvenile justice system. And there may be some pictures that float up here. I'm not that technically inclined, but I'll just keep moving forward. So in 1979, I moved to St. Charles County with my family. Lived off Highway 94, went to Becky David School, was the first 7th grade class at Barnwell Junior High, and you know, as a young 5th grader, you know, came into St. Charles County. In 1989, 10 years later, I was struggling, went to college, was barely making a C average, and my dad was a sheriff's deputy at the time at the new sheriff's department 2 blocks down, and said, "Hey, they're opening up a new juvenile justice center upstairs, and you should apply." And I'm like, "Well, what the heck?" So in 1989, I interviewed with Ray Grush, and let me say, it was the worst interview of my life. I'm telling you what, I felt about this small at 20 years old. The guy was brilliant. And he was tough, and he took things seriously. But I interviewed, and he called me the next day and said, "I can't offer you the job." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry about that." And he's like, "Well, it's because you're not 21 yet. You have to be 21 for the court to hire you. So call back on your birthday." So I called back on my birthday, and the rest is history. I got a job in juvenile detention, and he gave me my shot to steal from one of my favorite plays. He gave me my shot, and I continued to work for the juvenile court. In 1993, the 45th Circuit split from the 11th Circuit because St. Charles continued to grow. And I moved to Troy, and I had to live in Troy as a juvenile officer because they had residency. And then from there, I've worked for multiple not-for-profits, and for the last 32 years in healthcare and behavioral health. And I stayed in touch with Ray. And in 2009, while he was battling cancer, my 13-year-old son had a similar type of cancer, and he was at the David Pratt Center, and Ray drove out to Troy, Missouri on his own time and met with my son. And my son is now at U of I getting his PhD in history. He's cancer-free for many years, but Ray, that's the kind of guy he was. Ray passed in 2011, and that's 10 years ago exactly. In 2014, about 7 years ago, some key community stakeholders got together and said, "Hey, Ray was nationally recognized as a state expert in juvenile courts. He did so much for the juvenile justice system in St. Charles County, grew it from the ground up, and we want to recognize him." And so 7 years later, here I am talking to you again, not as esteemed as some of the folks that knew him personally and worked in the court system in St. Charles County, but he gave me my shot, and I would be remiss if I didn't say he gave thousands and thousands of kids their shot. And I was a kid at the time he hired me. And I'm not talking about people he hired, but people that were going into the court system because they made bad choices, and he diverted them from prison. Or kids that were abused or neglected and got them into appropriate foster care housing. Thousands and thousands of kids he gave their shot, and I think it's an honor, and I'm hopeful that you would support the name change of the St. Charles County Juvenile Justice Center to the Raymond J. Grush Juvenile Justice Center. Just one last note, 2022, next year will be the 50th year that he would have been a juvenile officer for the system for St. Charles County. So again, I appreciate your time, and with that, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of other people who wanted to come up and make some brief comments. This is Judge Rebecca Navarro McKelvey. When I was on the bench, you were the attorney for the juvenile office, and now you're on the bench, so welcome.
Hello, Your Honor. Good morning, or good afternoon.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. Good evening. I also was very fortunate to have had Ray Grush in my life. I've lived in St. Charles 21 years, but he is the one that allowed me to begin my public service for St. Charles. I had been a prosecutor in the city of St. Louis, and I came to St. Charles, and he hired me to be eventually his chief legal counsel. And when you talk about what public service really means, I think Ray Grush is the very definition of that. This was not a job for him. This was a vocation. This was his life's work, his passion. These were his children. I have gone past the juvenile office on South River Road Christmas Eve, and he'd be there. Thanksgiving, and he'd be there. He felt that all those children, that those little souls were his responsibility. And when he became ill and was dying of cancer, I went to visit him. I had the privilege of visiting him in hospice. And I thought, like most folks in that situation, that he would be focused on his own suffering, on his prognosis. And what he wanted to do is sit down and take me as a young professional and tell me, you've got to do right by these kids. Every single case is about a person. And he just went through about how he wanted me as the attorney for the juvenile office to serve these kids. Never once talked about his future, what was going on in his life. That was his concern, was how the children of St. Charles were going to be taken care of. And I cannot think of anyone else that is more deserving of this honor, that when the public comes and walks into that building, that they see Ray Grush's name there. It would be a wonderful way to acknowledge what he's done for so many. So I just want to thank you for your time, and I very much appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Judge McKelvey. And I think Fran Piper wanted to say a couple of words. Good evening. Good to see you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak tonight on behalf of Ray Grush. I was fortunate to meet Ray when I started the Task Force for Child Abuse back in 1978. And Ray was there in the corner helping me do all the work that we needed to do in order for us to prevent child abuse, to educate mandated reporters. Ray was in the trenches with me hour after hour, and from that task force we became the Family Stress Council back in 1988. We are still in existence, and Ray was a big supporter of everything regarding children. I want to make it short and just say that for the well-being of children, Ray Grush, that was not only his personal life, but it was his professional life. He did anything and everything for the well-being of children. So I hope really and truly that you think seriously about changing the Justice Center's name to Ray Grush. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. I got a feeling this is going to come out pretty well. But let me just say, I met Ray in 1981 when I first became an attorney. He came to see me and told me I had been appointed by the court to represent a double murderer who was in the big penitentiary, and against whom had been filed a petition to terminate his parental rights of a child. It just so happened that this soon-to-be client of mine was convicted of murdering his son's grandparents. And for some reason, the mother had given up her rights, but he didn't want to give up his rights. So Ray drove me to the prison, which was, he got to stay outside. I had to go in, visit with my client. That was an eye-opening experience. And we had a trial, and I fought like crazy for my client because that's what attorneys are supposed to do. But I have to tell you, I was probably as relieved as anybody when the judge ruled against my client and his parental rights were terminated. And then a few years later, he hired me to be the attorney for the juvenile office on a part-time basis. There was not an attorney there at the time. So I just walk up the street from my office and try cases every week. And I always stayed in contact with Ray, and of course, at the end of my career, 26 years on the bench, I went back to juvenile court because I wanted to be there and kind of bookend my career working with juveniles again, and it was a pleasure to reconnect with Ray at that time. And like Rebecca and like many of the people, Ray called us to his bedside at the hospital or to the hospice. He wanted to say goodbye to each of us personally. It was just such a emotional experience. He was just a wonderful person, and I look forward to moving forward with this bill and to having a dedication ceremony, which I think is going to be planned for sometime in the spring, to rename the St. Charles County Juvenile Justice Center the Raymond A. Grush Juvenile Justice Center. So thanks for being here.
Do we have any other comments about this bill?
Nope, that's it.
Seeing none, we will, thank you to our guest who showed up tonight. We will take that up in 3 weeks at
Yeah.
our next meeting.
Yeah.
So
All right.
with that, we will return to our agenda as scheduled. And it should be a conditional use permit that we have. It's actually on our list right now. But Bill number 509 was placed on the agenda under conditional use permits. It's actually amending an earlier CUP, so it shouldn't be placed in this spot. It should be under bills for introduction. So we are going to move Bill number 509 to bills for introduction, and we will start that as our first bill when we get to there. So just in case you're scoring at home, that's where we're at right now. Which brings us up to public comment. So for those of you, which I don't think many of you are new, most of you have been here for a while, we have our clock over here that gives you your 3 minutes to go. So we will do 3 for, 3 against on any particular topic. Once a topic is broached, we will go through those, and then if we have another topic, I'm sorry, is there something going on? Oh, we want to shut the door. I think he's got it for you. So when your 3 minutes are up, the timer will go off. I will thank you for speaking, and we will move on to the next speaker. So our first speaker tonight is
Arnie Dienoff.
Mr. Dienoff. Mr. Dienoff, I will tell you your comments were taken on the CUP at the Planning and Zoning, so we have those on record, and we have those. So,
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say congratulations on your new grandson.
Thank you.
That'll be born anytime. My name is Arnie A.C. Dienoff, County Public Advocate and running for County Executive. The first thing I'd like to address is the Wentzville I-70 curve and the lack of lanes. With $39 million was passed by Congress and approved by the East-West Gateway Coordinating Council, we finally did it as a team effort in terms of lobbying various agencies and various elected officials at the federal level. So we all need to congratulate ourselves. But why do we continue to pay a lobbyist over $80,000 to lobby East-West Gateway Coordinating Council when he has a clear conflict of interest and it serves on a governing arm of the East-West Gateway Coordinating Council? Budget discussion started at the workshop, and I asked this council to cut the 2 other lobbyists and save $160,000 in lobbyist expense plus $80,000 to the East-West Gateway lobbyist. Next is the Medical Examiners Commission. I'm asking, and I've had discussions with the Director of Administration, you pay over $200,000 now. Access to telephone meetings of the Examiners Commission. This county and this commission needs to be cognizant of our citizens' time. The commission agendas and the commission meeting minutes need to be placed on the county's website that we paid over $100,000 for GovServe. Mary Case's salary has not been disposed or disclosed by this county, and it needs to be. Is she also being paid by St. Louis County and also being paid by St. Louis City? Bill number 5006, the City State Highway Patrol FBI fingerprinting. Is this the right thing to do, or is this an infringement of our county employees' federal and state constitutional rights? Bill number 50007, this is just another corporate welfare handout and shell game while we pay millions in bills for North Point development. They have their handout and they have little to no skin in the game. but will reap the benefits of access to their property, increased property values, and a roadway to other parcels, making profits for a private development company. I propose the following: 30% from the city of St. Peters, 35% from the county, and 30% to be paid for by the developer. They're only creating 580 minimum wage positions, and I believe it's called the Walmart grocery delivery system. There's no guarantees, and no one checks up on the developer and does not do an audit to ensure that we're getting our return on investment. And county appointments, it was a terrible bill.
Thank you,
HB
Mr. Dinoff. Your time has expired.
I'll address it at the next meeting. Thank you.
Jen Olson.
Can I put this on the table?
Sure.
To raise the thing up? Never done this before.
Hang on. There we go.
I would like to make, I'm Jen Olson. Okay. I'd like to make a suggestion to Mr. Ellman in regards to the new COVID quarantine and mitigation guidance. But before I do, I would like to ask what authority you're deriving your power from when it pertains to the subject. I would also like to ask what medical and scientific data you have to justify the continued unconstitutional overreach of the Department of Health. There is no emergency. If you disagree, I would appreciate, and I'm sure the public would as well, an explanation tonight to the public that specifically answers this inquiry. The clock is ticking for our children, their health, and their livelihood. People are losing their jobs, their homes, their savings, their lives, everything they've worked for, because of this never-ending government overreach that nobody has the courage to put an end to. You'll just simply say that you issue guidance, but you know full well employers and educational institutions view your guidance as directives, and they've been using it as such. Please have the courage to end this. I know you have the data to end this, as well as the scientific and medical supporting proof. Please go back to the drawing board and revise your new guidance to simply say, there will be no more quarantines or testing or jab requirements in this county. And if you want to make that stick, I would kindly suggest that the board or the council members would pass a motion or a resolution tonight that recognizes such quarantines, testing, and jab mandates that are punitive and unconstitutional by public or private institutions in this country as a direct violation of our civil and human rights as Americans, because every one of you knows that it is, especially a woman who is, Your Honor, a student of the Constitution. This council and the health department, led by Mr. Ellman, are allowing tyranny by refusing to end this. Now is the time, today, not tomorrow, not at the next meeting, today. It's really that simple. Thank you, and I look forward to your explanation or responses in regards to the most important and pressing matter of the restoration and protection of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in our county.
Marion Boatwright.
In reviewing the Modus Election Manager RFP more closely, I believe we should consider the following. Was cost analysis completed to evaluate in-house versus outside vendor? If this is about keeping track of election judges, couldn't in-house employee handle this? There's a saying in O'Fallon, keep it in the O. If you can't keep it in the O, you keep it in the Co. If you can't keep it in the Co, you keep it in the Mo. This basically means we try to support friends and neighbors who live, work, and pay taxes in our community. So why are we immediately going outside St. Charles County and Missouri for services? Have we analyzed security risk, election judge name, address, cell phone, email, party affiliation, voter ID, date of birth, and social security are in the system? These items are PII, personal identifiable information per the U.S. Department of Labor. Safeguarding this data is important to preventing fraud and other nefarious election mischief from taking place. As an example, election judges, poll workers, and citizen auditors were harassed as they tried to do their patriotic duty in and after the 2020 election. This information will apparently be housed in Microsoft Azure Cloud and Amazon AWS. I'm personally not a fan of either of these companies or their owners. I find it concerning Intech did not have insurance amount compatible with Missouri law. They stated it would cost an additional $21,000 per year to get compliant. The price just went up. I'm a fan of mom and pop shops. However, I have concerns this small company may not be able to support our needs, including fulfilling local, state, and federal laws. I noticed a number of specs they didn't have, which means another $145 per hour to get those. Which company completes their penetration test to check for exploitable vulnerabilities? I did not find that. Maybe most concerning question asked, can companies outside U.S. apply for RFP, i.e. Canada or India, etc.? Answer, yes. Can tasks related to RFP be performed outside of U.S.? Answer, yes. Have we not learned anything after the 2020 election? There were a number of other countries involved in the 2020 election fraud. Why would we be willing to provide any election information outside the country? I have a vested interest as I'm an election judge, a citizen, and a taxpayer. I'm also a nerd who reads fine print and contracts, and I'm a privacy junkie. That's why I declined to participate in electronic medical records. Those stipulate they can send them outside the country. China is one of the largest collectors of medical information and DNA. This gives them a pharmaceutical advantage and ability to market to those who have a propensity for certain conditions or an advantage in creating a bioweapon. If we think governments around the world, including our own, aren't using gain-of-function to enhance naturally occurring viruses, we're being naive. I often wonder if HIV, Ebola, swine flu, SARS, Zika, West Nile, and Lyme diseases weren't enhanced in a lab, kind of like COVID. More research needed on that, as well as Fauci and Gates. They do not have our best interest at heart. So the moral of the story is stop giving our information out needlessly, especially outside the country. It doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Amy Benninghoffen.
Hi, it's been a minute. I just came to speak about the quarantines, of course, again, and the vaccinations. See, I work with kids every day. And so not only do I have children of my own, but I work with small children and the children who are in the school district that my kids go to. And I have to put little 3- and 4-year-olds on a bus with a mask every day. They can't wear them. I mean, this is just like, let's take a step back and really look at this. 3- and 4-year-olds, yes, I'm talking to you, Steve, because I know that you make most of these decisions. They clearly have not been making the decisions you have. So my thing is that these 3- and 4-year-olds cannot wear a mask. The bus driver tells them to pull it up because they're 3 and 4 years old. This is just absurd. Why do we keep doing this when these children, when they get COVID, because once again, I said I work with small children, it's a cold. Since when do we quarantine and vaccinate and wear masks for a cold? Okay? I mean, it's just like, enough is enough. Why don't we be the leaders and show St. Louis County and the other counties, instead of following other counties and doing what they're doing, we can be the leader and say enough is enough. Why are we doing this to our children? Why are they the ones having to put up with this? It is absurd. I do not understand it, and I will keep getting up, and we will all keep getting up here until you all are sick of hearing us, because we care. That's the thing. We care about these children. You don't have to see it every day, so it's easy to sit back here behind your benches and your desks. You're removed, so it's easy. Well, it's not so easy when I have to strap a mask on a 3-year-old who doesn't want to wear it and can't. It's not so easy. It breaks my heart every day. And now we're going to give them a vaccine that we have no idea how it's going to affect them. And the thing is these vaccines don't even work, people. Everyone is still getting COVID. People who are vaccinated are still getting COVID. The majority of vaccinated people are still getting COVID and can spread COVID. So what are we doing? We are perpetuating insanity. That's what we're doing. I would just love to understand the logic behind all of this. It does not make any sense. We're not crazy. I'm just an average mom. But I feel crazy. You're not.
Haley Hercules.
Good evening. Early last week, I attended an event where Steve showed up requesting an endorsement for his reelection for county executive. After considerable bragging and patting himself on the back numerous times, celebrating the victories of St. Charles County during COVID with no mandates, he proceeds to say, and I quote, "Kids can't learn if they're not in school." To which I asked him what his plans were to advocate for change and truly keep kids in the classroom this year. I reminded him that there were over 29,000 student quarantines issued by his health department last school year. He replied and told me to stay tuned for changes. Well, those changes were rolled out end of last week. Pretty much in summary, in order for your student to indefinitely avoid a close contact quarantine, they must be vaccinated. The newly modified option would be for the exposed student to wear a measly piece of cloth over their mouth for 14-day quarantine period in order to remain in school. My 10-year-old fifth grader is autistic, nonverbal, and hearing impaired. She will not tolerate a mask due to her disability. It's even in her IEP. She relies heavily on reading lips, facial cues, and mimicking her therapist's lip formation when attempting to speak. Masking hinders her ability to learn, and it's just not an option for her to wear one. Per the new guidance released by Mr. Ellman, the only way for my child to avoid a close contact quarantine would be for her to be vaccinated. Why is this nonsense only happening in our schools? I encourage you to ask Mr. Ellman and his temporary health department director, why are vaccinated individuals being provided preferential treatment and exempt from quarantine? We have overwhelming evidence that the vaccinated are still contracting and spreading COVID. I thought this was about public health for everyone. If that in fact was true, then the vaccinated would be held to the same standards and guidelines as the unvaccinated. The circus was held at the county's family arena, kids everywhere, and yet no contact tracing done there. No contact tracing done here at the county council meetings or at restaurants, bars, concerts, or other large events. Nowhere else in the county. Ladies and gentlemen of St. Charles County, it is important you understand Ellman's latest guidance is nothing less than a backhanded vaccine mandate for our children. It is time we hold him accountable for his lack of performance. He continuously says one thing, yet does another. No more. We must ensure Ellman is not reelected into office. He is the definition of a rhino. I'll leave you with these 3 words. Let's go, Ellman.
Joe Moran.
I'm the applicant for Bill 5010.
We can call you up later, man. It's all right. Dude, I feel your pain. I completely understand. It's okay. You can have a seat. We'll talk about you. We'll talk about your issue later.
And the rest of the 5 speaker cards are on bill number 5010.
Oh, okay.
That's him. That was him.
Which we've
That's
already.
the variance.
That was him. That was that guy.
Yeah, so we're done.
So that's the next issue. So there are 5 cards on that
Oh,
issue.
then
So
yeah,
if you
go
wanna-
ahead and come on and talk.
But I'm not held to the 3 minutes, am I?
You are at this point, but
Yes.
when we discuss the bill, there's no time frame.
Okay, because I want to give you all the information that I have available.
You're welcome to speak now, or we'll call you up when your bill is going on.
We've read it.
Well, there's a lot more, because what you have from the building department, and I'm not saying that it's, that they're lying, but there's a ton of inaccuracies that are provable.
So here's my options for you.
Yes, sir.
You can take your 3 minutes and say whatever you want to say right now in the 3 minutes, and then we can call you up if we have more questions when your bill is up.
Okay.
Or you can wait and we can call you up when your bill is up. I will give you that option, so
Okay, then I'll just do it when it's time for the bill.
it's all good.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Same for everyone.
No,
Donald
next.
Struckoff?
We're talking about the same thing. You guys can come up and.
If you want to speak now, you can. If you want to speak while we discuss the bill, you can do it then. It's up to you guys. Okay. So we'll just bring everybody up when we get to your bill. Fair enough? Okay. No more speakers?
That's the final speaker.
All right. So with that, we move to oral report from the county executive.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just quickly, I want to congratulate Mr. Brazel because he has at least identified the areas where we disagree and discussed them in a reasonable sort of way. Recent statements just now about mask. As you all know, we have never had a mask mandate in St. Charles.
Folks.
That's rude.
We've never had a mask mandate, and you know we have not had one because I believe it's unenforceable, and we've never had a mask mandate, and that's why each of our school boards have been forced to make some difficult decisions. I'm sure some school board members would have rather the county simply tell them, hey, you got to have a mask, and then they could have, been spared the debate. But the fact of the matter is that we don't have a mandate. And because we don't have a mandate, that's why all the school boards have had to deal with this. And everyone's done a little bit different. Some have gone one way, some have gone another, some have gone back and forth. And I think that's healthy. And you can look maybe at some of the results that were up on the board to determine. You can determine yourself which districts were wiser. But the most important thing is the school bus. That's the Federal Department of Transportation that ordered that back long time ago. We have never ordered anybody to wear a mask and none of our school districts have ordered anybody to wear a mask on a bus. That's Federal Department of Transportation. Thank you.
All right.
I'll make a comment on that real quick, Mike.
Mr. White first.
Mr. Allen, could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you, just the last part about
the mask on buses?
Well, about the whole thing about, I didn't hear you completely about we never did require a mask.
No, we've never had a mask mandate, and I don't anticipate we ever will. And I think when you look at the results last year, I think we didn't have a mandate, and we didn't have any more cases than St. Louis County. So people in St. Charles County that did wear a mask did it of their own volition. I think a whole lot of them did. I think it makes a big difference when people make that decision on their own. And we never took the position that we were going to force them to do something they didn't want to do. So,
Mr. Brazel.
Mr. Brazel.
Steve, I just got to say, I think that I don't quite understand your perspective because I think I'm not criticizing you, I'm really not, but you're truly confused because when you have a health department that puts out a 16-page or 12 pages, whatever it was, I can't remember, they've been revised, that has guidelines for school districts, those school districts are going to follow those guidelines put out by your health department. And it does have mask mandates in the guidelines. That's a fact. And so when you do this modified quarantine thing by saying if you're within close contact, which is picked out by your health department, by our overzealous health department, then what happens is the child has to wear a mask for 14 days. That is a mandate from the health department. So I don't understand the confusion here. If we were leadership, hold on, Steve, I let you talk. If there was true leadership in this county right now, we would tell the health department, sit down, cease and desist, all this nonsense. Just stop. It's over with. Stop right now. And that's what the first resolution said that you folks didn't want to pass. And that's what we should be doing now. It's because there's no common sense to this. You go into every store, you go to football games, you go wherever you want to go. We're not doing mask wearing, we're not doing contact tracing, but we do it for the kids. Why? Why? Does that make any sense? Is that because of all the federal money that's flushing around? It's all hush money? What exactly is it? I mean, I don't get it. It makes no sense to me. I'm a pretty smart guy. I really am. And this doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. And I can't, Steve, God love you, I can't figure you out on this one. And you guys I know you, I'm trying to be polite. I'm trying not to be mean because you say I'm rough and I cuss too much and all the other stuff. Well, I'm just besides myself. This makes no sense. None. And we're not defending our kids. And we're sure in heck ain't doing what the people in this county want. You know, I mean, if we're supposed to be Republicans, this is not a Republican perspective. I'll tell you that. This is not a conservative perspective. This is a crazy perspective that makes zero sense.
All right, thank you. So with that, we move to the consent agenda. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda? Mr. Cronin.
Nothing to remove, but I'd like to add the information system for professional services for election management software to the consent agenda.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'd like to remove something too. I'd like to remove the appointments.
Hang
I'm
on.
going to add.
We have to do one at a time. So we have a motion made and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so it is that. Mr. Brazel, what do you want to remove?
I'd like to remove the appointments on the Sports Authority, please.
The Convention and Sports Facility Authority.
Yes, sir.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll give him a second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's approved. So, Mr. Brazel, you removed something, so.
On the Sports Authority.
I'm sorry, hang on a second. So we need to discuss that, but in the meantime, do I have a motion to approve the amended consent agenda minus the convention and sports?
So moved.
I have a so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so the amended consent agenda is approved. Now, sorry, Mr. Brazel, back to you.
Okay, thank you. I am very disappointed in the appointments. Not that any of these applicants aren't qualified. I'm not saying that whatsoever because they're all very qualified applicants. I'm just disappointed that in the historic wine district, we have been working so hard on tourism, on different ways to come up with funding avenues, come up with different ways of marketing. And when this came about, when the bond issue was paid off by St. Charles City, and then the county is going to the sole authority of the Sports Authority, this is a big deal. This is millions of dollars that the county board of the Sports Authority will decide where this money goes. And so when I was made aware of this by Mr. Ullman, I'd given him two applicants. These two applicants, one was a Democrat, one was a Republican. You guys saw my email. These are highly qualified individuals, attorneys, CPAs. And they've lived in this area for over 20 plus years. They all had businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses in the area. These guys are retired. They're young retired people. And they interviewed with Mr. Ullman, and they were highly qualified applicants. Now, one of the problems with me that I'm having with this COVID stuff is I'm not going to bend on this stuff. And I realize I've been screwed over on everything that's coming my way with the redistricting, with this kind of stuff. I get no grace, none. Well, I'm not going to give in on this COVID stuff. I'm not. And so I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to do. But this kind of stuff on this appointment in my district, when I had highly qualified people that applied for this position, and some person who is, I'm sure, qualified, has lived in the district maybe 2 or 3 years, has not had a business in our district, has not been involved in the tourism area, gets appointed, is not the right thing to do. At least one of the applicants, and you guys know who the applicants are, but I'm not going to use names, but it's not right. It's just not. And one could say that the contributor is a highly big contributor to Mr. Ullman on his political campaigns is his wife, and that's one thing that could be said. That's what a lot of my constituents are saying. Come on, guys, I just want to make a point. And it's just, I don't understand. So if this is how it's going to be from here on out, when I make some requirements or some requests, and they get totally ignored because of my strong stances on this stuff, then so be it. But that's how it feels, okay? And so I just wanted to make that point. You guys saw my email. I sent it out to everyone, Mr. Ullman and you guys. I said I'm disappointed with these appointments because nobody that I ever submit gets appointed, ever, in the last some period. And so as a council body, the proper way for our government to govern is to have total separation from the executive office and the legislation office. But that's not happening right now. Everything goes usually 5 to 2 on this board. And it's got to stop, because we're not, this is not, our government is not being run the way the charter intended it to be. And I'm just pointing that out, because I can't support these appointments, and I'm not saying they're not qualified. I'm just not going to support it because I don't like how it was done. I got not one phone call, again, on this thing, and that's just the way it's going to be, I see. But as a body, I want to tolerate that for any of you guys, even if I don't agree with you. You got to do it the right way. That's all.
Can I ask Joe a question? I just looked at your email that you sent, and I'm not asking you to say it in the open meeting, but you didn't say who those people were. Now, other people may know who those folks were, but I didn't know, just to make that clear. So I'm not asking you to tell me now.
Well, and I appreciate that, Nancy, but it's not about the individuals. I don't want to,
No, I know. You just said that we all know who they were, and I was just pointing
Oh,
out.
no, you would
that
know who they
I
were.
don't-
Yeah, you would know.
If you told me their names, I might, but
You
I
would.
don't know who they are.
Yeah.
But are you saying that because of this one particular situation, that you don't want to vote for the other people at all, or are
Well,
you just
I don't
saying?
want to pull, if I pull anybody's name out, I don't want to really do that.
Oh, I
'cause-
see what you're
yeah,
saying. Okay.
So I just don't want to put anybody,
Okay,
you know.
I was just trying to clarify what your
Yeah.
position was and what you were trying to do. Thank you.
Mr. Cronin.
In 10 years in the council, I have not seen Steve play favorites on any of these appointments. We've never talked about Convention and Sports Authority, Steve, okay? I never asked you to appoint anybody or not to appoint anybody. I know a few people on this authority, and I think they're all pretty good people, okay? So usually your list has got good people. I vote for it, I'm fine with it. So I take exception of what Joe said, because I don't think that's the way things have worked in the past. If I had a problem, I would tell you, but there's not been a problem. And I think the people we have that are on this list, the ones that I know, are all good people, so I think we should approve it and move on.
I think you're missing a point here, Joe. I understand what you just said, and in most cases, you're right. But on this particular board, we've had meetings with Mr. Ellman on this issue. This was a big issue because we wanted this sports authority to be pushed in the county's jurisdiction so we could help with the wine district. And that was why we were solely involved in this for the last several years. And John, you know that. And so that's the reason why it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, we thought we were going to be, look, this is about what's best for the area. It's not about the people. That's not about the people on the board.
I agree.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on this? Yep, follow the money. So, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
may I inquire of Mr. Bradley?
You may.
Mr. Bradley, did you see the email I sent out this afternoon in response to your?
I can't, no, I was working.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, in that email, I basically said that I don't remember you asking me to appoint anybody individually. I, of course, know that you're interested in this issue, but I don't remember you asking me, and you have in the past asked me to make certain appointments. In some cases I have, in other cases I haven't. But in this particular case, these are two very talented individuals, okay? And I'm sure that if the wine country businesses decide to go after this money that the convention authority is going to have available, they should be right in there making the pitch. And they didn't, you know, the only thing I've asked any of the people I talked to was, and I told them, I don't really have I don't have a favorite here. I'm not appointing you so that you can do this, that, or the other thing. The only thing that I asked them to do is all the money has gone to one place for a long time. And now we're going to have an opportunity for people in the other parts of the county to have proposals. I'm sure one will come from the wine district, but these individuals are very close to that. And what I'm looking for is not somebody to represent the wine district. I'm looking for somebody that will represent the rest of the districts up here, and hopefully listen to a whole bunch of proposals from everywhere from Augusta to West Alton to Wentzville. And I'm hoping that they'll have several people come in, present ideas, and in the end, they're going to have to make a tough decision on where to spend that money. I ask them just to make sure that when it's over, people feel like it was a fair process, that everybody got an opportunity to present their proposal, and you may disagree with the final decision they make, but you know, I just want people to go into it with an open mind, and I think the 5 people that I have, and I haven't done this quickly, it's taken me a long time, I've interviewed a lot of folks, and I think the 5 that I gave you will do a good job of representing the whole county, not just one district or one part of it.
Any other questions or comments? About that, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to accept the appointments.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It is approved. That brings us up to bills for final passage. Bill number 5003.
Bill number 5003, an ordinance authorizing the professional administrative services agreement between St. Charles County and the City of St. Charles for the city's operation of the Urban Counties 2021 Community Block Grant Programs and Services.
Any questions or comments about this bill? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5003, an ordinance authorizing the professional administrative services agreement between St. Charles County and the City of St. Charles for the city's operation of the Urban Counties 2021 Community Development Block Grant Programs and Services. Councilman Cronin?
Yes.
Councilman Brazel? Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman White?
Yes.
Bill number 5003 passes on to bill number 5004.
Bill number 5004, an ordinance approving agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for use of county right-of-way for storm sewer utility and road work.
Any questions or comments on this bill? Seeing none, please call the roll.
An ordinance approving agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for use of county right-of-way for storm sewer utility and road work. Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman White?
Yes.
Councilman Cronin?
Yes.
Bill number 5004 passes on to bill number 5005.
Bill number 5005, an ordinance establishing unpaid leave access to employees who are victims of domestic or sexual abuse or whose family or household members are victims of domestic or sexual abuse, to comply with the Missouri Victims Economic Safety and Security Act, VESA, and paid leave access temporarily to certain county employees.
Any questions or comments about this bill? Seeing none,
Bill number 5005, an ordinance establishing unpaid leave access to employees who are victims of domestic or sexual abuse or whose families or household members are victims of domestic or sexual abuse, to comply with the Missouri Victims Economic Safety and Security Act and paid leave access temporarily to certain county employees. Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman White?
Yes.
Councilman Cronin?
Yes.
Councilman Brazel?
Bill number 5005 passes on to bill number 5006.
Bill number 5006, an ordinance requiring the fingerprinting of employees, prospective employees, and volunteers within county government for criminal history record information from the Missouri State Highway Patrol and Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Mr. Cronin.
I'd like to make a motion to table this, Mr. Chairman, and work with Joanne Lakem in terms of guiding us more with ordinance number 19069 that we passed a few years earlier. We spoke about last meeting. I give just a little bit more time, please. Okay.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It is tabled. That brings us to bill number 5007.
Bill number 5007, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the City of St. Peters for use of St. Charles County transportation sales tax funds for road improvements needed to support the Economic Development Lakeside 370 North Point Development Project.
Any questions or comments, Mr. Cronin?
North Point did a similar project to this in my district with the GM Logistics Center, and I want to point out that all we're doing is making the road to the building, and that same road will be used by other businesses in the area. We did the same thing for North Point Logistics Center a few years ago, created a ton of jobs and also other growth in the area. So this is a good thing. It's an economic development as much as it is road, and I'm pretty certain North Point will do a great job on it like they did with the project in Wentzville.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5007, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the City of St. Peters for use of St. Charles County transportation sales tax funds for road improvements needed to support the economic development Lakeside 370 North Point Development Project. Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman White?
Yes.
Councilman Cronin?
Yes.
Councilman Brazel? Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Bill number 5007 passes on to bill number 5008.
Bill number 5008, an ordinance repealing Chapter 275 of the ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, relating to regulation of the sale of ephedrine and pseudoephedrine-related products by St. Charles County as adopted by Ordinance 11-062 and as amended by Ordinance 11-079.
Any questions or comments on this? Mr. Cronin?
I think we should rename this the Grandpa Elam Allergy Relief Bill, okay? I've got a lot of comments already. A lot of folks are really happy they can buy their allergy medicines and cold medicines again over the counter.
I appreciate you joining me on this. I've been wanting to do this for a number of years, and Don had pulled some information together for me a number of years ago. I appreciate the chief and Tim Lomar both being on board with this, and hopefully we can stop the Mexican meth from coming in and just get rid of it all. But being that the winter season is here, my sinuses are very happy that we finally got this on here. So for that, please call the roll.
Bill number 5008, an ordinance repealing Chapter 275 of the ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, relating to regulation of the sale of ephedrine and pseudoephedrine-related products by St. Charles County as adopted by Ordinance 11-062 and as amended by Ordinance 11-079. Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman White?
Yes.
Councilman Cronin?
Yes.
Councilman Brazel? Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes. Mr. Cronin, I hope your wife enjoys her pseudoephedrine and Sudafed, and she can get that down. So that wraps up bills for final passage. On to bills for introduction. Bill number 5000.
Mr. Chairman, can I have a point of order, please?
Yes.
I'm missing something here. On items removed, what about the professional services elections management software? Weren't we supposed to remove that to put it back on the consent agenda?
I did.
Mr. Cronin did that.
I did.
Did.
I did.
We did.
He
Did
did.
he do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah. So bill for introduction 5010.
We have Bill 5009.
Oh, sorry.
Requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Mike Elam. An ordinance amending ordinance number 07-098, granting conditional use permit CUP number 682 for outdoor storage of automobile, boat, and recreational vehicles to Weldon Spring Business Park LLC.
My bad. I moved my own agenda, and I forgot that we amended this. I'm like, I don't have 5009 on my agenda. Gotcha. All right. So this, Mr. Hollander will remember that they talked about this at Planning and Zoning, and this is a outdoor storage area that is already in business, and they're just expanding the area. I know Mr. Dienoff spoke on this in talking about the fact of, as he said at Planning and Zoning, we don't want to put storage areas out in front and take up our best frontage for this, but this is something that is in the back of the property already. It's backed by skate park that you may remember that closed a number of years ago, and it's just expanding into an area that's just an empty lot right now. So with that, I would ask if anyone else has any questions or comments about this. Seeing none, we will move on to bill number 5010. I'm right on that one, correct? All right, back on the ball.
Bill number 5010, requested by Michael Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance affirming the Board of Zoning Adjustments decision on application VAR 21-02.
All right, so with that, any questions or comments about this bill?
I would ask for Mike Herbert to come up and do a kind of a summary on it, or Robert, whoever, whichever one of you guys.
Certainly. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
The address is 5280 Hackman Road, and the location is a few hundred feet east of the Augusta city boundaries. And it's in the what you might call the crook of Hackman Road. It's a half-acre parcel that's existed for many decades. It's zoned agricultural district. You may remember in that district, the minimum lot size is 5 acres. But there's also a lot of parcels that are smaller than that. In fact, we have in the agricultural zoning district about 2,030 parcels that are less than an acre, but they're zoned agricultural, and this is one of those parcels. The county's standards for on-site sewage disposal systems is that it needs to be at least 3 acres in area in order to install such a system. So if you have a parcel between 1 and 3 acres, it's possible that such a system can be approved for that parcel, but it needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis. In other words, if there are, thank you, that's the location that's outlined there. For instance, taken on a case-by-case basis, the county staff will review the soils and et cetera and make sure that such a system can work for a parcel of 1 to 3 acres. This is not even 1 acre, so the county staff doesn't have the authority to approve an on-site sewage disposal system for this parcel. The applicants applied for a permit to build a house, and that permit was prematurely issued, but then it was withdrawn by the county because it doesn't meet the 1 acre requirement for even consideration for such a permit for on-site sewage disposal system. And that's the crux of where we're at today. When the when the permit was denied, the applicants applied to the Board of Zoning Adjustment for a variance to allow a parcel, this specific parcel of 1/2 acre, to be developed with such an on-site sewage disposal system. The Board of Zoning Adjustment at their September 2nd meeting, they denied that application, and so the applicants are appealing it to this body. So what's before you is an application to reverse the Board of Zoning Adjustment's denial of the variance, and because of that, you have on your agenda an ordinance which is affirming the Board of Zoning Adjustment's decision. You have the option of affirming, approving that ordinance and affirming their decision, or you can deny or you can disapprove of that ordinance. And if you do that, then under our own protocols, we'll bring back to you an ordinance for your consideration to approve this application. That's basically where we're at today. So what you have before you is again an application to grant a variance to allow an on-site sewage disposal system for a parcel of less than 1 acre. The variance criteria, there's 4 of them. They're outlined in your packet. Briefly, the first criteria, the variance is requested due to unique circumstances inherent to the specific piece of property. Number 2, the variance is not needed as a result of an affirmative act of the property owner that could have been avoided. And then also, there's descriptions of the other criteria as well. We've been advised by the county councilor's office that it should meet all 4 criteria, just not 1 or 2 or 3, but it should meet all 4 criteria in order for the county to grant a variance for such an application. So I think the key to the county's review of the zoning variance request is not necessarily to choose a particular waste disposal system, but instead to determine whether the parcel or the ground itself qualifies for a hardship under all 4 variance criteria. County staff is recommending that this body affirm the Board of Zoning Adjustment's denial of the application. And I would say the applicant and the applicant's representatives are here too, Joe Moran.
Mr. Brazel, do you have anything to add?
No, I know some of the neighbors here, they want to speak, and I know the applicant wants to speak, and so if you guys want to, whatever you want to do, I guess Mr. Moran, give him an opportunity, and, we have all the packets, so just try to keep it brief if you want to come up here.
Thanks, Robert.
There's inconsistencies in fact.
Go ahead. Hey, come on up. We prefer for you to not yell from the side, but come up.
Certainly.
Hey, before you start, are any of you, she left her microphone. Would you mind grabbing that?
She said she's coming back.
Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry, I didn't want her to leave it, so. My bad. Sorry to interrupt your flow. Go ahead. What would you like to tell us?
Well, I had a lot of notes prepared here, but if you would want me to keep it brief, I can just address what was, in the variance request. There's I would completely agree with,
Is this yours?
yes, that's ours, but what is written that comes from the county is not necessarily correct. There's some stuff in here that's not correct.
Okay.
Okay, so I just want to address some of the things that are wrong. Anyway, my name is Joe Moran. I'm a 38-year resident of the county. I bought the lot in 2008. There's 3 witnesses here tonight that say there was still a house there in 2008 when I bought the property. It was not bulldozed in 1940, whatever. It was still there. So if there's discrepancy on that, I can actually prove that. The county website said then when I bought it, and it said now, that the property type is vacant residential. That's what it is. And I'm going to, with permission to approach, I'm going to show you. I just printed this off the website tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Moran, is this denial, this denial new to you, though, this recent denial?
Yes.
So didn't you apply for an application in 2011?
Yes, and it was approved. And I'm going to get to that. I want you to suspend your disbelief for just 1 minute. Let me tell you what really happened and that it's provable, okay, Mr. Brazel?
Mm-hmm.
So I bought it, like Mr. Brazel said, in 2008, that I did get a permit to build a house. I obtained a building permit. And also, do you see where it says that the land is vacant residential under property type? Okay, I wanted to make sure you saw that. My wife and I wanted to build a house out there because we love wine country, and Mr. Brazel will be your best customers in wine country. So I bought it. So what would be prudent for me to do before I buy a piece of property? Talk to the county. Talk to the county. So that's exactly what I did. I called the building department. They said, you can absolutely build a house here. I said, okay. I said, my building plan that was approved to use the existing footing of the house that was there as a cost-saving measure. So I actually had the blueprint drawn to match the existing footing. That is 100% provable. Pull it from the building permit record.
Okay.
The county has it. So I was going to build, the economy tanked, so I said, wait a minute, I'm not going to build. So I decided to hold off, because this was, did you say 11?
I think so, 2011, yeah.
I'll take your word for that.
Yeah.
So it was right around there. The economy was tanking. I'm like, you know what? I think we should hold off building. So that is provable. That's not just my word against someone else's. To use the existing footing, okay. Mr. Myers, right? Okay, we met, because my whole thing I wanted to do was get it resolved. Okay, so what do we have to do? So we met, and he indicated at that time, if that were the case, that he would be likely, he didn't commit, he said he would likely to say the county would, or that his office's position would be for you to approve. Is that correct from our meeting?
I can update them.
Okay. So that was in the meeting. I said, oh, okay, great. So we'll do it wherever we can. I hired a septic engineer that he designed a state-of-the-art system. And actually, the county ordinance of 3 acres is behind the times for the type of septics that they build nowadays. They don't need a big leach field. The technology is so clean. So that's an opportunity for new zoning requirements in the future. There are alternatives. There's tons of alternatives. You don't have to have the big, long drip systems anymore. Those are, you can have those, but the type that I've proposed is 3 or 4 times as expensive as that, and it's state-of-the-art. But that's the reason for the ordinance. So when you're considering this, what's reasonable? If you have an engineer, that can tell you why this is bad, that not approving this is not only, it's not even consistent with what the state of Missouri does. And I understand that St. Charles County can have their own additional burdens.
Mr. Moran, I don't know if we need all these specific details, but there's other issues, though. Setback issues. You're 10 feet next to the neighbor's property. Your leach field is going to dump into the ravine on Hackman Road.
None of this is true, so I think the council will want to hear the truth, Mr. Brazel.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is the place to debate it, but I mean, I think that I have to go off of what I'm told by community development, and that's what we're doing. I mean.
Mr. Elam, can I continue?
Yeah.
Okay. So I got a permit, it was revoked, then I applied for another permit that was revoked 6 months into my building permit. 6 months, we'd already begun construction. I got an email from Alspa that said the permit was issued by mistake of the county, and I have that email that says the county issued it in mistake. How is that any consolation to me? And I'm saying, okay, I'll pay more money and get a state-of-the-art system. I'm in the middle of construction. I've already hauled out $10,000 worth of dirt, and one of the members of the Board of Adjustment said, and now where am I at? I can't even build anything here. And he smiled and said, oh, that's not true, you can build a garage. And what he was obviously saying is, looking forward to if we can't resolve this here, that it might go to a lawsuit. It obviously came from the lawyer.
I get it. Let's stick to this.
But it's not that simple. To build a garage, and the building department can testify to that, it has to be on undisturbed ground. My whole basement is excavated right now. So $30,000 worth of inch clean rock would have to be put in to put a footing on top of it to build anything there. So it's not so simple as, oh yeah, you can build something there. I'll move forward.
Thanks.
So it was resolved, and just to get back to,
I'm sorry, hang on, what was resolved?
It wasn't, I misspoke.
Okay, sorry.
I want to get to the four items that must be met for the variance requirements.
Right.
Because that's really what we're here, just like what the council said would be necessary. Let me find it here.
Do you recall what system you were thinking about putting in there? What type of system it was?
I have the engineer here, and he's going to speak after me to tell you everything you ever want to know about the system and how clean it is.
But you don't know what the name of it is right now?
Pure Flow? Oh, it's a peat moss system is the type of system.
Yeah, well, that's been around for a while. That's not that new.
But I mean, it doesn't require the big, huge leach fields, which is all, I think it's amazing. Okay, so they say in the staff recommendations that it doesn't meet all four of the requirements. I'm here to tell you it absolutely does. Once I find the four questions.
Well, the variance was requested due to unique circumstances inherent to the specific piece of property and not to personal considerations of property owner.
Yeah, and it's absolutely true. Well, I pushed something, I don't know what I did
That
here.
looks like the third page of your,
Yeah, I have that here.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It absolutely is. There was a house there before.
Okay.
And it's still shows on the county website that it's vacant residential, not agricultural. It's shown as to have a house. There was a house there. So it's very unique to this situation.
When you say a house was there.
Yes.
You're saying you're saying was there like back in the 50s or whatever?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that my wife and I removed shingles, rafters, the whole 9 yards. The house was there, it existed. And there's three people. There's the person that sold it to me here tonight, however many years ago that was, and there was my wife that helped me dismantle it.
Okay.
I think, Mike, if I may, I mean, I want to hear from these folks, and then if we want to come back to you, I mean, unless you guys want to keep whatever you want to do.
I want to get through those four.
Can you do it quickly?
Yes, I can.
That'd be great.
So that's the first one, that it's unique.
All right.
The second one, the variance is not needed as a result of affirmative action. The county says adjusting the lot line to the south increase the parcel size. I went and asked the neighbor to the south. He said, and he put it in here, he said, I don't want to sell you any of my property. And I said, will you sign this for me? Donald Struckoff, I said, just so I can show him that I asked you, I'll do whatever it takes, I'll buy some more.
Okay.
So I addressed that. Connecting to the city sanitary system, which is the closest point, is 500 or 600 feet away. I can't do that. I have to go through other people's property, one of which is saying, I'm not going to give you any property. I cannot do that. Their third thing that they wanted to do, that they suggested, was installing a sewage holding tank. Now think about it on face value. That's going to get pumped out every so often instead of something that's going to be processed. So every time you connect, there's an opportunity for sewage to leak. A holding tank, just to hold your sewage and have it removed when you need to have it removed. I don't think that that's a viable solution that is even in best interest of the county, and it makes me wonder, what is the motivation of the building department here to even put that suggestion in writing? It's impossible on its face. You're going to put a holding system and pump out your sewage. And those heavy trucks would be going up and down the street. So that's the second piece. The third piece, the variance would not merely grant a special benefit to the property beyond what is enjoyed by other properties regulated by the same set of regulations. This had a house on it. I was told, what's different is I was told by the county, not once but twice, I was issued building permits. Yes, Joe, you can build. Sounds good. I did my due diligence. And the fourth one, the application of such non-use regulation would result in practical difficulties to the property owner. Here I am. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing, and I've engineered the most expensive state-of-the-art system, and I'll let the engineer talk about that. If anything were to come out of it bacteria-wise, he's even put a UV light system on there that would, even though he's going to testify to you that nothing is harmful will come out of this system, that the water that comes, the effluent that comes out of here is clean enough to drink, even beyond that, we've agreed to put a UV system on top of it in the chance in a billion that a microbe would come out. The UV light would kill anything. We've not tried to cheapen anything. We've relied on the county to tell us that this is good property that you can build a house on. They've issued me a permit not once but twice.
Okay.
I was going to ask, gentlemen, what's your name? I talked to you. Greg, you were Mr. Struckoff. If you guys want to, you were going to come up with public comment if you want an opportunity to speak for quickly.
My name is Donald Struckoff. I reside at 5266 Hackman Road. We own the property next to the property in question right now. I've lived there for 81 years. There's been two houses actually built on this. The first one burned in 1938, and the second one was torn down after about 2011. The size of both of those houses' foundation measured 20 feet by 30 feet. I've slept in that house, so I know of the size. And the residence that's apparently being planned is quite large for the lot. It comes within 10 feet of the property line. The property next to this, we use agriculturally. We've fed cattle there. We've piled hay bales there. We've treated poor hay with anhydrous ammonia. We stacked it within 50 feet of the proposed residence, and cattle been pastured there. We've parked machinery there. We use this property for the reason that of the acreage that we have, most of it's in the floodplain, and only 12 acres is in the hills. And and only about 5 of that is where you can safely drive a piece of machinery on if it's wet. So in other words, this is an integral part of our operation. So we use this area right up to the doorway or right up to this property line of this residence, or would be. This residence is large. The residences that were there before were set back somewhat from the property line. I'd say, maybe a wash line width and about 10 feet more, maybe 15, 18 feet from the line. This house apparently is going to be big enough that our calves are going to use it for a windbreak in wintertime because it's well to the south side, and they'll just find a place to sit there. Now, I realize that people want to live in a rural area, and it's nice, it's peace and quiet, But sometimes it's not peace and quiet. Sometimes the calves have to be warmed up in a bathtub, and things are not cool. And you can, rural areas have a good reputation of having people living there and enjoying it and everything else. But sometimes you live a little bit too close to it too, if you ain't up to your elbows in it. So I don't think that putting this residence there, and with the expectations that people have of moving into a place and having a undisturbed life or an undisturbed livelihood or what, retirement or whatever they want to do there, or resting on weekends, which is what some of the other property owners did. They bought it and used it as a weekend retire or getaway. So I don't think that this property would be at residence would be compatible with the property use that we use. Now, you would say, well, why don't we just sell them some property? For the reason we don't sell is because it's integral to ours also, and we couldn't really sell them enough ground without selling one of our buildings or this whole area where we've been parking machinery on and basically using it as a staging area.
Okay.
So that's my particular. Now, if you want any more information on the way the old houses were, there was a house. There was a 20 by 30 house. There was a 12 by 12 wash house with a basement underneath it. There was a chicken house also on this, and a vegetable garden on this property before. And there's basically, it was a country residence of people that were just trying to get along. So,
All right, Don, thank you.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Robert, did you want to come back up and say something?
Can I respond to what Mr. Struckhoff said?
Sure. You do realize we're not going to solve this tonight, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just
Well-
want to make sure you know, because this is a bill for.
There's a
this
second
is-
hearing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I just want to say that I've met Mr. Struckhoff, I know him, I believe he's a treasure of St. Charles County and a wonderful human being, and I appreciate what he's saying. We're not asking him to not be a farmer. We know you run a farm right there, and there were some trees along the back property line that you said that you planted when you were a kid?
We didn't plant, we just let them grow there.
Oh, okay. So they were in his fence line. Now, some of it was over his side, some of it was on my side, and he said, hey, I'm worried about these falling because you've gotten into the root system excavating. I said, absolutely, and I met the man out there, I said, you show me which trees you want gone, and I even offered to replace his fence lines. He said, no, it's a 50-year-old rotten fence line. So we have every intention of being a good neighbor to Mr. Struckhoff.
Okay.
Could I ask him a question, Mr. Moran?
Yes, ma'am.
Some of these documents, I really can't read, I'm sorry, because they're really small, and I'm not blaming you for that. But who are Jan and John Weitzel?
Jan and John Weitzel are the homeowners.
They're in the
They're
back.
my in-laws.
You own the property,
I did own the property. I
but you
sold-
don't own the property now.
No, but I'm the home builder. So that's why I applied for the building permit
Okay,
to
and so
build
are-
it for Jan and John.
Okay, I kind of figured that. And so are you affiliated with Berkshire Homes?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out who the players are. Okay, that's what I wanted to know, thank you.
Yeah. And this is the homeowner, Jan Weitzel.
Jen, you can stay in there. We can just hand you that if you want.
I just have a broken femur.
Okay.
Oh, is that
I'll be
all?
fine.
You probably shouldn't be moving around a lot. I'm just saying.
I have a little bit of weight on it now. That's my grandson, Jack.
Hey,
I am Jan Weitzel, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with the council tonight. My name is Dr. Jan Weitzel. My husband, Jack, and I are the owners of 5280 Hackman Road in Augusta. Many of you know me. I have been an educator for 49 years. I currently serve as the president of Cotty College, a women's college located in southwestern Missouri. My husband, Jack, is in the back. He is retired. He's a Navy veteran, and he worked for many years as an electrician.
I will be retiring finally in June, and it has been our goal and our dream for the last couple of years to build this house on the Hackman property. Now, as some of you know, Jack and I lived in St. Charles County for 20 years. During those years, I served as a professor, a dean, and a provost at Lindenwood University. We have a strong network of friends here in the area, and our goal is to move back and resume those relationships. Additionally, of course, our older daughter Sarah and her family live in Lake St. Louis, and they were a huge influence in our decision to move back. My two local grandchildren, Jack and his sister Maya, are in elementary school and high school, and our goal is simply to go to baseball games next year and marching band competitions. We are currently very active in our home community of Nevada. My husband is a member of Lions. He volunteers for Habitat for Humanity. I am a Rotarian, and I'm a member of the PEO Sisterhood, a women's institution or organization, and we're members of our Methodist Church. We look forward, Mr. Brazel and everybody else, to being active members of the Augusta community and of St. Charles County. The land that we are discussing is for our retirement home. We guarantee that it will be well-maintained and it will be very beautiful. It is, yes, larger than the properties the homes that have been there in the past. But as you will hear from the engineer, and I hope you'll give him a moment to speak, this proposed septic system is far superior to the typical leach field system. And it is supported by the reports that you have in front of you and that were shared with the zoning commission and now with you as well. Honestly, I just look forward to gardening, reading a book that I want to read, and just spending some time with my grandchildren. My husband's going to will be spending most of his time fishing, I am sure. I understand that you as a council have a responsibility, and you have a responsibility to the county. And I am confident, though, that what you're seeing addresses your concerns and your questions. I ask that when you take this vote, you recognize that it's more than just a vote. It's really about our future. And to answer the question about city folks moving into the country, my husband and I grew up in a town of 3,500 in Iowa. We then moved to Nevada, which is a town of 8,000. We know the rural area. We know what the rural area is about, and we are so looking forward to going back to our roots. I ask you to please, just allow us to build our home, become active and worthwhile members of the Augusta community. And I simply ask with all of my heart for your support for this variance. So thank you for this, and if we could now just give the engineer a few moments to talk about the septic system, which really is at the heart of this issue. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I prefer not to hear from the engineer, and I'll tell you why. Unless I'm wrong here, I'm going to talk to Robert. But from what I understand, if in fact this variance is, if we don't agree with the staff, then we have to write an ordinance that allows septic tanks on smaller lots. Isn't that what you said, Mike?
I think that's what Robert said earlier in his
Right, and
comments.
so,
You could write the ordinance specific to this lot, and therefore,
So, Robert, come on now.
even if you could have 3 minutes, I think it's important.
Hang on.
The bill that's before you is to affirm the Board of Zoning Adjustments decision. Obviously, you can approve that or you can deny that. And if you deny that, then my understanding is a procedure, county staff would bring before you a bill to overturn the decision of the Board of Zoning Adjustment and grant a variance with or without conditions. So, but it would be specific to this property if that's.
So
what
that
you choose.
ordinance would only apply to this particular case and
Correct.
this particular property?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing I would add, if I could.
Mike, is that correct? Is that what you, that's not what we talked about today?
Robert, go ahead and finish.
Well, I think Robert.
I would, I wanted to clarify that in 2011, a building permit was issued for a house on this parcel, and the reason is, the applicant at that time, which was the Morans, they turned in a copy of the deed, which said it was a half-acre lot, And then they also turned in a survey of the lot, which says it was 1.06 acres in size. So there was a discrepancy between the deed and the survey. We went with the survey because sometimes surveyors are able to find things in the field, you know, pens and stones, et cetera, that we're not aware of. So we went with the survey, which said it was 1.06 acres. That allowed the county staff to issue the permit at that time. Presently, the applicant's survey with a different survey company is showing it's a half an acre. So it goes back, it's reflecting what the deed said in 2011. The other thing I would add is that when we met with the applicant at the beginning of this process, I was led to believe that there was a house either here or it had just been torn down, that it was something that was newly torn down, had been a functioning system. I learned later that there hadn't been a functioning system on this property for at least a decade, and I wasn't sure how many decades, but 1, 2, 3 decades, I wasn't quite sure. So because of that, I felt that the facts were different in terms of the variance criteria.
Robert, you made mention that, or Mike did, I can't remember which one, that it's a half acre, but that goes all the way to the center of Hackman. Is that correct, Mike? Is that what we talked about?
Yeah, there's some easements, I guess, aren't there?
Well, that's another problem from what I understand.
The survey that's been submitted by the applicant that's in your packet, it shows a little bit over a half acre, and that shows the center line of Hackman Road. If you take out the easement or right-of-way for Hackman Road, it's right around a half an acre instead of like instead of 0.5.
So something that was 0.4 something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Robert, I have a question. Besides the septic, there's other issues too, right? Is there anything other than the septic that would prevent from building this house? Is the setback requirements and square footage requirements and everything else met?
The setback.
The setback for the septic system. So there's zoning setbacks, but then there's also setbacks in the building code in terms of these sorts of systems. And so it doesn't meet those setbacks in the building code from, for instance, the roadside ditch. It's showing that this system would be only 10 feet from roadside ditch when it should be more than that. Now, there's a separate process they can apply for, potentially for those building code setbacks, but that's a separate process that we need to do that separately.
Go ahead, Mike.
So one more thing. So the discussion about the septic has nothing to do with the variance appeal that's before you. The variance appeal is about the lot size. They requested a variance from, a relief from the lot size requirement to build a house on this property. That is all that's before you. So the lot size is what it is. Regardless of the type of septic or the size of the house, anything like that, has nothing to do with the variance appeal that was denied. And that is what is before this council.
So the long and short of this is, it was denied because the lot isn't big enough.
Correct. It doesn't meet the lot size, and they weren't able to show that all 4 conditions can be met.
Now, is that the 3-acre lot size or 5-acre?
5 acre.
5-acre lot size.
Do you have anything further to add?
No, I mean, we could have some other conversations later, but without, not up here.
It comes to the council because this is an allowance in the variance appeal process to be able to come to the council. They can appeal the decision of the Board of Zoning Adjustment. So that's where they're at.
But how did it get this far with them spending so much money on the property now?
I think it's because there was a miscommunication about the size of the lot. Of what Robert was saying is they thought the lot by an earlier survey was 1.06 acres.
I understand.
And then, okay.
But how could a survey company make that big of a mistake?
That I don't have an answer for.
In the past on the same lot. In 1949, they had to survey that lot several times before they finally figured out what it was.
Okay.
And even right around 2011, when a survey was done, they actually staked out into our field. And I was just going up there at Radnor one day, there were stakes all over the place. And I went and got down and
Okay.
that's when we were told.
One of the problems there with surveying is the corner, the section corner. And every time they survey up into the town of Augusta, into the backside of it, they wind up 6 or 8 feet off there, and they've done that. The first survey, for each survey company winds up 10 feet off of that thing every time they do it the first time.
Okay.
Even with the modern instruments. So something that's really, but it's always been straightened out.
Okay. So, Jan, I would tell you, with all due respect to the amazing septic man, and I don't know who you are, but I'm sure you're great, and I'm sure your septic system is award-winning, and we will concede that, and UV light and all, right? It's amazing. But at the end of the day, if the lot isn't the right size, it doesn't matter if it is award-winning. It can be the greatest septic system ever designed by man. If it doesn't fit, then that's our problem that we're addressing. So it could be great. We've got to get by this particular issue that Mr. Hurlbert was talking about, and that is the issue that we have to decide in front of us right now. So we will not decide this evening, but I would ask the council, does anyone have any further questions of the applicant so far? All right, so.
This might not pertain to what we're discussing, but I'm just wondering what legal aspect, the property owners have towards this survey company. They've got all this money in there. It was proposed that they had this acreage. Now it's proven that they don't. So it looks like, I can't say that, but I'm just curious where they would go back to.
Mr. Cronin.
I would, I've built my own home on my own ground. I've had septics in this county my whole life, and I can't see how a way you can fit a home and a septic and all this on, less than a half-acre ground. So if you're asking for more information, I'd like to see a full site plan. I see something in this thing, but it's not something I can read. Digitally send a site plan of what you're planning to the county council office, please.
You have it, don't you?
Okay.
So we can get it.
Quite frank, though, that's not the, like Mike said, that's not the decision, but we're not here to pick out septic tanks, pick out plot plans, that's not our job. We're looking at just the ordinance as it's written, and so that's, we can have, like you said, we'll have further conversation, yeah.
But I would respectfully say it does have everything to do with the septic, because Mike can tell you if I'm wrong.
Well, with all due respect, we're moving on. So you can have your opinion, and you're welcome to it, but at the end of the day, like Mr. Hurlbert said, the ordinance is the ordinance. So the septic system doesn't have anything to do with the size of the lot. If the ordinance says you have to have X amount of size of lot, and the lot's not that size, that's our problem. And everything else is solved, and I'm going to ask you to hold your comments, because we're not solving it tonight anyway. I'm going to ask you to talk with Mr. Brazel, because he's the councilman for the area, and have him get involved with community development, see if there's anything that can be worked out, and then we will convene after Thanksgiving, and hopefully Jan's leg is healed by then. I'm going it. It's Lindenwood miraculous healing, right? So we're going that direction. So with that, we were moving on. I appreciate everyone's time. Sorry that you came and we didn't hear about the amazing septic system, but we will on the 29th mainly. So with that, does anybody have a? Oh, that's your, okay. So we'll move on to 5011.
Bill number 5011, an ordinance requested by Sarah Evers, sponsored by Mike Elam. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute intergovernmental agreements with municipalities to provide kenneling services or kenneling services and enforcement.
Any questions or comments about this bill? Seeing none, we will move on to 5012.
Bill number 5012, requested by Scott Lewis, sponsored by Mike Elam. An ordinance amending section 285.010 ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri regarding the St. Charles County Sheriff's Department civil process fee schedule.
Any questions or comments about this bill? Seeing none, we've already done 5013, so that brings us to 5014.
Bill number 5014, requested by Steve Ellman, sponsored by Mike Elam. An ordinance extending the duration within which a conditional use permit must be in place and in active use before it is considered null and void for all permits set to expire during the current 90-day extension, for a total extension period of 270 days from August 31st, 2021.
Any questions or comments about this? Seeing none, I'm assuming no action to be taken on the tabled bill. We'll move on to announcements and miscellaneous. Yes, sir, Mr. Cronin.
I'd like everybody to remember that Thursday's Veterans Day, and I'd like to thank the veterans that serve in this council and the veterans that are in the police department, sheriff's department here as well. And that's all I have there.
Mr. Brazel.
Remember the first weekend in the summer is the Defiance Christmas Parade, and it's always a great time, and it's actually the biggest parade in its littlest town.
Dave, you're next in line. Do you have anything?
Oh, and Don, by the way, Don drives the, what is it, 1941 fire truck? 53, yeah. Yeah.
Don, are you 81? Yeah. Or you just lived on that property since 81?
No, I've lived there all my life.
We want to know about the night you spent in that house, though.
That's a closed session meeting that we would have to have, I have a feeling. Anybody else have anything? Mr. Elman?
Yeah, following up on Mr. Cronin, on Thursday, we have our annual Veterans Day ceremony out here, if it doesn't rain, and 1:15 or 1:16 if it does. And Governor Parson is going to be the speaker, and Senator Blunt and Congresswoman Wagner have indicated they're going to be here as well, make some brief remarks. So, should be interesting, and I hope we have a good turnout given who's speaking, and hope the weather cooperates.
That's at 12:30, correct?
That's 1 o'clock.
To 1 o'clock. I just have to be
You might
here
have
at
to get here at
12:30.
12:30, get a good seat, though.
This is true. All right, does anybody have anything else? All right, so I'm not saying that this meeting went long, but before this meeting started until now, I'm officially a grandfather, so welcome to Kason Michael Elam, who was born during this meeting. 8 pounds, 4 ounces, so to John and Natalie Elam, congratulations. I'm officially old, and I may not be 81, but when you hit grandpa title, that gets you a new level, right? All right, so with that, I would entertain, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion, do I have a second? Second. We are adjourned. You may remove your microphone.